Welcome to Trailblazers and Titans with your host, Dr. Keith Haney. Trailblazers and Titans is your go-to podcast for insights, inspiration, and actionable advice from the world's most successful entrepreneurs and leaders. Each episode features in-depth interviews with industry pioneers, innovative thinkers, and business moguls who share their journeys, challenges, and strategies for success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned leader, or someone looking to make a significant impact, this podcast provides the tools and motivation to blaze your trail and become a titan in your field. Tune in to learn, grow, and transform your vision into reality.
My guest today is Stu Crum. He's a college football heroics put him on the national radar as a model student athlete. Tagged as a winner with a natural gift for leadership, he made his name internationally in key positions at Texaco, Shell Oil, Jiffy Lube, and Bridgestone, wrangling deals with the likes of the activist investor Carl Icahn and other heavy hitters. Developing a simple, dynamic game plan that he calls intentional living, Crum lays out his playbook for success in faith, family, and business in his new book, Aim for the Uprights, the intentional book for success in faith, family, and business. We welcome Stu to the podcast. Well, Stu, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Dr. Haney, I am doing absolutely wonderful. How are you doing today?
I'm ghetto fabulous, as I used to say.
Yeah, well, two guys doing good.
There you go. So I love to ask my guests this question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Make your bed in the morning.
Well, I like that. Somebody said if you make your bed in the morning, that means your rest day starts off just perfect.
Yeah. Now there's a famous book or a famous admiral that talked about that, but it's my famous mother who's still alive, who's 90 years old, who taught me that actually. And the reason she taught me it was because if you make your bed in the morning, you're starting the day off right? And this is way before I was a Christian, and I think she'd give me different advice to start with a quiet time in the morning, but at the time that was the right thing to say.
I think in general said do that because that means you've accomplished something to start the day with.
Exactly.
So I like that. So tell us a little bit about your background, your journey, kind of how you got from being a baby in your mom's arms to where you are now.
Yeah. So I'm a corporate. A lot of people say they're Army brats. So I'm a corporate brat. So my father was in the pharmaceutical business and moved around. First 5 years, San Francisco. Next 5 years, Dallas, Texas. Next 8 years, St. Louis, which is I really call that home because those were my Foreign Bowl years. And then I went to University of Tulsa on a football scholarship. I was a place kicker, and drafted by the New York Jets. Played in the United States Football League. Married to my beautiful wife for 40 years. 2 wonderful children, 4 incredibly wonderful, I like my grandkids more than my children, but 4 incredibly wonderful grandchildren. And I've just been very blessed through my life, through my career. A lot of opportunities came from a wonderful family. My parents were both alive, 92, married for 68 years. So they've been a great model for my wife and I, and 3 brothers. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who I am. And there's a lot more about me, but that kind of encapsulates a little bit about my journey.
I love that. Seeing that you played football, I'm sure there are a lot of memorable moments in your football career, but what was one moment that maybe forever transformed or impacted your life even to this day?
Yeah. And it's actually, I'm going to share that with you in a 2-part story because it was the one part that got me to the second part. So it was my senior year. And at the time I was, this is 1983. So I know it's 100 years ago for a lot of your listeners, but, even 41 years ago, it was in 1983, and I was projected to be one of the top 2 place kickers in the country. I had just come off a red shirt season because I detached my retina the year before, so I hadn't kicked in a year. Very first game was against the Air Force Academy. Went out and attempted 3 field goals, and I missed all 3 field goals. And here I am, supposedly the best kicker in the country, and I missed my first field goal attempts. And as a kicker, your coach says, dude, what's up? You're supposed to be our man. And have you, gone from, good to bad all of a sudden within a year not playing? Well, I actually, had to make a couple of changes, but it just happened the next game I was playing our in-state rivals, which was Oklahoma State University. And I went to University of Tulsa. So that it's a small little private university that plays Division I versus big state university that also plays Division I. And I actually had the opportunity to kick a lot of field goals that game. I was voted the Chevrolet player of the game. I kicked 4 field goals, one from 57 yards. And all the things that I did wrong in the first game, I did right in the second game. But what that taught me, and it was a valuable lesson, was, listen, we none of us are perfect, and we make mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes and you correct those mistakes. And I had to correct my foot placement, my leg swing, and all of a sudden I found it, and I went on to kick, I think, 17 straight field goals from that first game. But it was all correction, right? And so that taught me a lot in my life. Is, when I get knocked down, and not knocked down physically, because kickers don't like to be touched, as you know. But when I got knocked down mentally and emotionally, I had to pick myself back up, because there was a team that was counting on me. Fortunately, the Air Force game, we still won, because they didn't need those 3 field goals. But it's just a great, valuable lesson in my life.
I'm assuming as a kicker, life is like, with some sports, a life of adjustments, because you have to account for the wind, you have to account for field position. What lessons did being a kicker teach you in terms of how you navigate your way through life in general with adjustments?
It really was, for me, about a consistency. So a kicker, and you see that it's a lot different today. When you watch NFL and college, you see these kids, they mark off, they do this arm motion. Heck, we didn't do arm motions back when I was playing. We didn't have coaches that knew how to kick a ball. That's soccer. And that's true. There was not one kicking academy that existed for soccer players back 40 years ago. But the one thing I did learn was process, which is kick me. The steps have to be right. From the right hash mark to the left hash mark, you actually take different steps, because the angle to the goalpost is differently, right? So I learned to process from the age of 13 years old. And that has really helped me, in particular, in my business career, because as I've become a CEO for the last 14 years and I've taken businesses over, I've had to put process and systems in place to make sure that we're doing things the right way every time, as opposed to, this person likes to do it this way and this person likes to do it this way. So kicking in sports in particular taught me discipline, process.
I love that. So what inspired you to write the book, Aim for the Uprights? Well,
let me tell you the story about Aim for the Uprights, and that will explain the title of the book, and then I'll explain why I wrote the book. This is back to 1983. It's before the NFL draft, and fortunately, I kicked 16 field goals in a row. So I was back to being one of the best kickers in the country. And I had a pretty good idea I was going to be drafted in the NFL. There were 4 of us that were the top-ranked kickers. There were about 5 teams that needed kickers after the NFL season was over. So the 4 of us who went to all the combines together pretty well knew we were going to be drafted. The New York Giants were one team that was looking for a kicker. By the way, I was drafted by the Jets. But the Giants special teams coach actually came to our field 2 weeks for the NFL draft. And he put 10 footballs across the 30-yard line, which had been a 40-yard field goal with the 10 yards in the right, from hash mark to hash mark. And I had my holder and my snapper out there. Snapper snapped the ball, holder put the ball down. He said, "Stop." I said, "What?" He said, "Stop." I said, "Well, why?" He says, "Well, you're going to kick the ball through the goalpost." I said, "Well, that's right, coach." He says, No, I don't want you to do that. I want you to hit the right upright." I said, "What? I've never been asked to hit a right upright in my life. If I hit the right upright, I've missed my field goal." He says, "Just trust me. Hit the right upright, or aim for the upright," right? And so I took my steps. I kicked the ball. And the very first ball from 40 yards out, believe it or not, hit the right upright. And I'm not sure who was more surprised, the coach or me, or my special teams coach, or all the people who were out there watching me that day. And I went on to kick 9 more, and I missed it. But he said, "Stu, why do you think I asked you to do that?" I said, "Coach, I have absolutely no idea why." He says, "Well, here's what I've learned is we've seen kids transition from college to professional is you aim for a goalpost when you kick. And if you miss a little bit to the right of that or a little bit to the left of that, you've actually missed your field goal. What we teach our NFL kickers is in a stadium to find somebody in the middle of that goalpost that you're actually aiming for. And so you're aiming right for that person. If you missed a little bit to the right of it, a 2 or 3 yards to the right or 2 yards to the left, guess what? You still made your 3 points." He said, "Stu, you've been aiming for good, but we want you to aim for great." He says, and I will tell you, from that day on, not only did it change my kicking and my thoughts of kicking, it actually became a metaphor for my life. And the metaphor for my life was, Stu, you can be good at something, or you can be great and aim for great. And so the whole name of the book is Aim for the Upright, which is aim for greatness, right? It's aim for greatness. Don't aim for good, aim for great. Now you have to read the book to understand that. Now, why'd I write the book? If you asked me 2 years ago if you can write a book, I would have told you absolutely not. I'll never write a book because I had no intention of writing a book. But I actually sold a company that I was running 2 years ago, and I sold it to a company called Circle K. You've probably heard of Circle K. They got like convenience stores everywhere. And I was running a car wash business. We had 71 car washes. They decided they want to get into the big tunnel car wash business. In the negotiations for 6 months with the negotiators for Circle K, at the end of it, the guy said, Stu, I got to know you really well over 6 months. You've had a really interesting life. You should write a book. And I thought, well, I never really thought about that. But what I had done for the last 14 years, I've been a CEO. I have actually every week written an inspirational note. I call them Stu's notes. And I write those to my team. When I was at Bridgestone, I had 23,000 teammates that worked on my team. And so they would receive that note. Right now, I'm in private equity. I'm building a company again. I've got 600 employees that are on our team. And I send that note. So I had 150 pages already of a book written of inspirational notes. And then what I end up doing is I wrote my chapters. I had there's a message about my wife who went through cancer and how we dealt with cancer. There's a message on my son in there, who was a professional baseball player, who after his fourth surgery got addicted to opioids from the painkillers that he was taking, and the journey we went on from there, and how hard that was. And so there's 18 chapters, and the book is the instructional playbook in faith, family, and business. Because what I realized is I started writing a leadership book, but it ended up becoming a book about my faith and how my faith is 100% part of my life, and about my family and how important my family is. And business happens to be mixed in there, right? Because my priorities are faith, family, and business. And I was writing a leadership book about business. Ended up being a leadership book for everybody, just thinking, are we intentional in our faith? Are we intentional in our families? Are we intentional in our business? Intentionality can be in anything you do. So that's to make a very short question a long answer.
No, I love that because you gave a lot of perspective there. So your book is broken into 3 chapters, 3 sections.
It is.
Game on, game changer, late game score. So kind of tell us a little bit about why those 3 sections. Because sometimes you think books are long and all that, but I like that there's 3 distinct sections. So tell us about those 3 sections of your book.
Yeah. So, and it's an easy read. I mean, for people who like reading easy book, this is one. It's 167 pages, big print. I'm an athlete, right? So we got to keep things simple. We can't complicate things too much.
Love the big print too.
Yeah, right. Got to have the big print, especially at my age, because you can't see small print anymore. But the game on element of this is just really simple. It is kind of the beginning stages of my life. It starts with a story about my aim for the uprights, but then it talks about how I, at 13 years old, used to kick footballs in the basement when I lived in St. Louis, and it kind of talked through that journey, right? And then the game changer, that's when I started developing a faith in the Lord and started growing in my faith journey. And part of that is also in my marriage to my wife and kind of growing through life. And the last part, of course, is late game score. And the reason we came to that, and it's really interesting, I was told from somebody, when people talk about their life, a lot of people work their whole life. I'm going to retire at 55. I'm going to retire at 60. And I'm thinking, I'm 64 and not even thinking about retiring. And so I share a perspective in the last few chapters that, and part of it is I never want to talk about money, because money is not how I view success in my life. It just simply isn't. But it just so happens that the last 5 years of my life, from 60 to 65, I've actually made more money than I made my first 35 to 40 years working. Where most of my friends have retired by that age, I've actually doubled my income from the first 35 years. So I do talk about how all those lessons that I had my first 35 years of working, I'm actually be able to implement with private equity-backed companies and running companies. And I didn't have that expertise in my 30s and 40s that I've gained in my 50s. And so it was time to keep on going.
I love that. So you talked about a leadership book. You wanted to do a leadership book.
Mm-hmm.
Discuss maybe one of the most challenging leadership moments in one of your companies, and how did you navigate through that? Because I love leadership, and I love to know how people deal with leadership. So share one of your stories.
Well, it's actually fairly early in the book, and it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. So I was appointed president, chairman of Bridgestone retail business. And if people are familiar with the Firestone and Tires Plus stores, there's 2,300 nationally, the largest tire and service company in the United States. I was appointed president, but I was told before I was hired, Stu, this is kind of a good old boys club that you're entering. And you've got to go in and change the culture of this business. And that's going to mean you're going to have to probably terminate a lot of people that are in senior leadership positions. Do you have the ability to do that? And I said, absolutely. I'll go in there and I'll assess situation. I'll make hard decisions. And I went in and sure enough, we had 6 regional vice presidents, and all 6 of those regional vice presidents ran the company as if they were owned. They've been around for 35, 40 years, and they're, quite frankly, just a bunch of white males that were always doing things the same way. And I had no diversity within this organization. I mean, no diversity, and diversity isn't a very, people don't like to talk about it today, but in business, diverse thoughts, diverse people make you so much better. Just because my customers are diverse. So I need my leadership team to look like my customers, which is the United States of America, by the way, not a bunch of guys that have been around for 35, 40 years doing the same thing. So after 3 months, I actually terminated 80% of my leadership team. And I will tell you it was hard. And the reason it was hard is it wasn't that they weren't good guys. These were nice. These are really nice people. It wasn't they didn't care about the company. They loved the company, but they weren't going to be able to take the company to the next level that I needed to go to. And I knew that. They didn't know that. The board that hired me knew that, which is the reason they hired me. And so I had to, over that time period, let people go who loved and cared about the people that they worked with and cared for, and I had to let them go. And I had to do it for the sake of my customers and also for our business success long term. But I will tell you, the leadership lesson in this is you have to make hard decisions, even when it's really, really personally difficult. The second lesson and I'll say this until my dying breath, diversity is really great in companies. Getting diversity of thought is one of the best things we can ever do because it challenges us. If a bunch of people look and act and behave just like me, that's what we're going to give. But if I got a bunch of people that look and act and behave a lot differently than me, I'm going to give the customer a better product on the street.
I love that. And what I got from your story is it reminded me of your opening story. I could be good or I could shoot for being great. And right. You didn't want to just come into a company and just keep it being good. You wanted to aim for the upright and make it great. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's hard. Sometimes those decisions are hard, especially when there's nice people. And these were really nice people.
So I'm curious. I noticed in your story, you had ended up negotiating with somebody, a high profile person like Carl Icahn. What was it like negotiating with, people who are like legends in their field? Yeah.
And Mr. Icahn is I think he's worth $17-20 billion, right? We're talking about multi-billionaire. Man, I got two great stories around Mr. Icahn. So, and the reason I had to negotiate with him is twice I had negotiated a deal with Icahn Enterprises to get this deal done. We were trying to buy Pep Boys, and he was negotiating on it, and we were negotiating on it, and we decided to bring our resources together. At least we tried to bring our resources together. And with his leadership team, we had negotiated a deal. And then all of a sudden I get a call at 6:00. I'll never forget. It's like December the 21st. My wife's in the car and we're driving to our annual Christmas party with all the leadership team at Bridgestone. And I get a call from Mr. Icahn's assistant, Mr. Crum. This is Carl Icahn's assistant. Could you speak to Mr. Icahn? Sure, absolutely. And I talked to Mr. Icahn, and at that point, he started retrading at 6:00 on a Friday night the entire deal that had been negotiated. And we got off the phone, and where I thought that morning a deal had been done, by that evening, the deal had been completely undone because Mr. Icahn didn't like the deal that his team negotiated. The next week, we got back to the table and started negotiating with his team again. I mean, this is the week after Christmas now, right? I want to be with my family, and I'm negotiating these deals. And the same thing happened. We thought we came to an agreement in place. I get a call at 6:00. Mr. Icahn starts working like at noon, and then works till like midnight. At least back, this is 9 years ago. And sure enough, he started retrading the deal again, and the deal never did get done. We ended up buying Pep Boys on our own without Icon's commitment with us. And then sure enough, 3 weeks later, after the deal had been announced, he came in and did a hostile bid on top of us, ended up getting the deal himself. And he still owns the business today. But, he was very professional. But he knew what he wanted, and it didn't really matter what the leadership team negotiated. He was doing his deal his way. And if we couldn't come to agreement, then the deal was over.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you have a concept in your book I want to get to. It's called intentional living. How has that influenced your personal and professional life?
I'd say it's 100% who I am as a human being. I didn't realize it till I started writing the book, but intentional living really started, I would call it intentional living / your purpose / your goals, right? I think those three words can kind of be intertwined in the conversation around intentional. At 13 years old is when I said, I want to play professional football. Well, it wasn't going to be as a defensive back. It wasn't going to be as a running back because I'm 5'7", 175 pounds. And I don't run a 4.3 40. I didn't run a 4.5 40, but I was not going to be the athlete to compete with these guys, right? So I concentrated on being a place kicker. I was a soccer player. And for that time from 13 until 25, when I was cut by the New York Jets, my third year as a professional athlete, I was intentionally trying to be the very best, greatest athlete I could. But what I learned at that early age was everything I do has got to be with intention. So when I got married to my wife, Mia, who once again, we're celebrating our 39th year this year, it'll be 40 next year. We were very intentional about our marriage, on date nights, on being active in ministry, where we were very active in a young life ministry as a young married couple. Actually, she was a women's youth director at the time when we got married, but we were intentional about how we did that. And then we were intentional, by the way, about how we raised our kids. We were very purposeful, intentional about how we raised our kids. And that's another aspect. So I was intentional in my faith. I was intentional in my marriage and my family. And then I became very intentional in my running my business, about the way I led my teams, about the way I behaved. And let me just give you one example of this. Is my fourth week on the job, I was working for a major oil company. And back in the old days, they're a little bit different. On this Friday night, they all said, Stu, let's go. We're going to the strip joints. I said, guys, I don't go to strip joints. I've never been to one in my life, and I'm not going. Stu, listen, it's just kind of our bonding. This is what we do after work. I said, well, guys, you can do that, but I'm not going. Number one, my mother would not want me to go to that strip joint. Number two, my wife certainly doesn't want me to go to that. And I wouldn't be honoring, anybody by doing that. And I stood firm. I will tell you that I was the only person on that team, and I was a very junior level person, right? So I bucked my boss. I bucked my boss's boss and said, guys, I just can't do that. I knew I was kind of putting myself out there saying, gosh, I'm not really kind of one of the guys anymore, because I'm not going to be doing what they think to do if it's against what my personal moral values are, right? It was just simply not going to do it. What I found from that experience was I stood to my guns, and people respected me for that. And I've stood to those same guns over the last 40 years of being a business person, of being a father, of being a husband, and character and integrity mean everything to me. And for that reason, I just don't compromise my core values.
That's hard to do in today's culture. How do you still integrate faith into your business when, sometimes faith is under attack in some places?
Well, faith is under attack, and well, we could talk forever about, Christian nationalism and all that kind of stuff, because I am a faith-based person, and I serve a Lord. I don't serve a nation. I don't serve, many of the things that you hear about faith is actually the opposite of what my belief in my Savior is. So I want to be really clear about that. There's a lot of things that are going on within the party system that I abhor, because I think my Jesus would be embarrassed in those things. So let's be clear about that. The way I do incorporate it into my business is everybody that I work with that knows me just a little bit knows that I'm a Christian. Now I really, really respect the other people's views. Not everybody on my team's a Christian. Matter of fact, we've got some Hindus on my team, right? And I've got different religions, and I respect everything. But I think they understand that I come from a set of beliefs that are going to servant leadership. I'm going to treat people with respect. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to expect them to work equally hard for me. And if you've studied at all servant leadership, it's about putting others before you. And that's the way that I have always tried to lead from, not always leading out front, but sometimes I'm leading from behind and bringing people with me and not being outworked and doing the same things they're willing to do, and not putting myself certainly above people.
I love
My
that.
faith
Yeah.
and my leadership style really has remained the same for the 40 years that I've been working. And once again, I've had success, but I don't call that material success. I've had success because I've had a 40-year marriage. I got great kids. I got great grandkids, and we've been able to touch a lot of people's lives.
You talked about your foundation being your faith and your family. So what role did your family play in your journey to success?
Now, you talking about my immediate family or my parents or both?
Well, both, because I think both have a role in that.
Yeah. Well, certainly, my parents, I never forget as a little boy, mom and dad, as I said, they've been married for 68 years and they're both alive. So we're very blessed to have them alive still. I was just with them 3 weeks ago in Oklahoma. They had 4 boys. All 4 of us were athletes. We were a very athletic family. Mother was an all-state softball player. Father was an all-state football player. So we were an athletic family. All of us played sports. And I always remember my parents being at every event. And that's impossible because we were 6 years apart and we had 4 different games at 4 different places. So you couldn't always be at your events, right? But that's the first memories I have is they were always consistent in being there and supporting me. I'll never forget in college, the first thing I do, and I'd be in a stands of 80,000 people, and I'd be looking for my mom and dad, make sure they were in the stands supporting me, right? I mean, so that's how that has really, that carried through into my raising children and being in marriage. And I knew I had to be present. So the first lesson I got from my parents and with my children is they talk about quality time and quantity time. I don't think you can have quality time without having quantity time. In other words, quality time just doesn't happen. You've got to be and make a significant effort to be there. A good example of this, I love to golf. Probably see my tan is, I'm on the golf course a lot now because my children are grown. But I will tell you, from the age of 25 when I had from the age of 30 when I had my daughter, to the age of 55 when my son quit playing professional baseball, I didn't play golf because golf took 6 hours on a Saturday. By the time I left, got there, played golf, came back, hung around with the guys, and I couldn't commit that kind of time because I was taking that time away from my family because during the week I'm working, right? I'm seeing them in the evenings, but I'm working, I'm traveling. And so I had to make sacrifices early. Now I can tell you from 55 to 64, I'm playing a lot of golf now because I have a little more time that I can do that. But those are just priorities, right? And I learned those priorities from my parents. I've got to be present. If I'm going to be a great dad, if I'm going to be a great husband, I can't do that from afar. I've got to be present. And so I've learned that. With my current family, listen, my wife, she's been a stay-home mom for 35 years, 36 years. I'm very fortunate that we could do that. I can tell you our first 2 years when we had children, we had one car because we couldn't afford to have 2 cars. So, life's a little different back years ago because we didn't make the kind of money that people are making today. But we struggled, but it was our commitment to have her stay home. I don't say everybody should do that. That was our commitment. But she supported me 100% in my career. We're in our 18th home right now, Keith, in our 18th home. We've moved around the world. We lived overseas in New Zealand. I ran Latin America, 38 countries. We lived in Miami. I can tell the amount of moves we've had, and she supported me in that. And she supported me because she knew that was the best thing for my career and for our family. Support is what I've had ever since I've been a little boy. And I think that is one of the reasons why children can grow up. If a child has support from the mother and or from their father, it goes a long way to success.
Wow, what a beautiful story. And what a beautiful testament to the importance of family and kind of living out that balance. Because I'm sure in your position, family and faith and business was all kind of a hard thing to balance. And so you found a way. Is there advice you would have somebody who's young right now trying to balance their faith, their family, and their business?
Yeah, well, I'd say being intentional, right? So I have, and then I'll answer that exactly. But, if you're intentional about it, so the 8 points of being intentional, have purpose, priorities, know what your priorities are, right? Distractions. Take distractions out. Distractions are the biggest problem in being intentional because all kinds of things get in the way. Distraction for me was golf. I took it out. Harmony. Go back and make sure that you have your peace within everything you're trying to do. Self-reflection. Sometimes it's really important to self-reflect on what we're doing in our lives, right? And going back, taking responsibility for your actions because all of us screw up and we do mess up. And so you got to responsible. The last two are real basic. Grit. You just got to have grit. You got to keep on going and keep on going because you get knocked down and you come back. You get knocked down, you come back. Because I get knocked down a lot. I'm not very smart, guys. I get knocked down, but I keep on coming back. I'm not smart enough to know that I shouldn't be coming back. And the last thing is, and anybody knows me knows, I say smile. Those are the 8 things. Just smile. So my point to any listener that's saying, hey, how do I deal with these things is be very intentional in your life. Decide who you want to be. I always decide I'm going to be a person of character and integrity, and I'm not compromising those things, right? I'm not sure if you saw the debate last night. I watched the debate between the 2 vice presidential candidates, and I was kind of impressed. They actually, for the most part, it wasn't too much lying, a little bit lying. And if you lie once, that's one too many times, by the way.
Right,
it really is.
Exactly.
And I think we've got used to it. It's okay to lie. I mean, we have created a culture where not telling the truth is okay. No, it's not okay. And it's not okay doing it not once. So don't do it a bunch of times. But decide what your core values are and then stick to those because people are going to respect that and they're going to really care for you. And they will respect you at the very end of the day, whether they believe or don't believe what you're standing for.
They wouldn't call it lying. They call it creative storytelling.
Yeah, it's downright lying. And I think, I tell you what, I wish the 10 commandments were the 10 commandments, not 10 suggestions.
Exactly.
I think a lot of our politicians could probably learn from that, just making the 10 commandments and not 10 suggestions. I think we'd be a lot better place to live.
I agree with you. So if you wanted to give advice to young professionals of how to achieve success, and I would say success is more, not so much about financial gain, but like we just talked about having a person that you can look back in your life and say, I was a person of character and in the process, maybe there was some other achievements along the way, but really it's about character. But what advice would you have for someone who's looking, a young professional starting out?
Yeah. And Dr. Keith, you just said it. I mean, you really just said it was, define who you want to be, right? For me, it's character and integrity, and stick to your guns. I mean, literally sit down one night and say, this is what I want to achieve in my life. And these are the things. These are my personal things. These are my family values. These are my business. I've never looked at my life and said, I'm successful because I've made blank, period. That my success, I don't view success as big house, big cars, big rings, big everything, right? That's not success to me. Is cool family, loving family, great friends, touching lives. And so I would tell young people that are listening to identify what's important to you, write those things down, write them down, keep a book of those things, and then go back and review and see if you're staking to those things that are important. What I have found so much is people most people want to have strong moral character. They really do. But when they come up against, something that I think this will help me get ahead, they compromise those things. And everything that they stood for has stood for nothing because they compromise their values. So stay very true to your core values. That's the advice I have. And I can't tell you what your core values are. I'm just telling you to stay true to what those core values that you identify for yourself are.
I love that. So you've written this book. What's next on horizon for you?
When I wrote the book, I thought I was going to retire, and not retire, like not stop working, but, do board work and do public speaking, those types of things. And I was sitting on a board of a company, and the CEO and the board of the company resigned literally the week before I stepped away from my old job that I'd sold to Circle K. They asked me to stay on for 18 months after I sold the business to them. 2 weeks later, I'm stepping into the CEO role, running another business, another startup business, trying to build it again. So, what I'm going to do right now is keep on building this company and hopefully touching lives and making the people that I come in contact with, their lives a little bit better every day through the actions that I have. That's
cool. So here's my favorite question to ask my guests. What do you want your legacy to be?
I'm sorry, just broke up. Say that again.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah. If I had an epitaph, I thought about this. Stu loved his God. Stu loved his family. God loved Stu. His family loved Stu. And Stu stood for right and wrong, and he was a man of integrity and character. That if that's my legacy, then and that's my epitaph. I've led a good life, and when I get to the pearly gates, good, you're good and faithful servant. That's what I hope God says to me. Right?
Yeah, isn't that
That's
great?
it.
Yeah, that's neat. I love that. So as we wrap this up, and this has been a phenomenal conversation, what key takeaways do you want to leave with the audience?
Well, first of all, if you want to buy my book, it's on Amazon.com. Aim for the Uprights, and the audio version is inexpensive. The e-version is fairly inexpensive. The book isn't really expensive, but you got to actually print the book, so it's more expensive. If you want to look for a little playbook to help you get through life, a lot of anecdotal notes, please pick it up, because I think it can help some people, at least in a small way. And if I can help people in a small way, it's great. I can tell you one thing: I won't make money from writing this book. It's a labor of love, not a labor of financial success for me. And that's really the truth.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social media and connect with you?
Yeah, StuCrum.com. It's really easy. I've got a website, StuCrum.com. I'm not in other social media places. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I am in LinkedIn because it's business, but I do have a website, StuCrum.com, and they can find me there as well. So
no TikTok videos of you dancing and on the golf course?
Yeah. And you can find me in the golf course anytime. No, right. I'm kidding. I'm working for a living again. So darn it, I'm not golfing as much as I wanted to. I thought I'd be speaking and traveling and doing all kinds of things. And here I am in my office, going another go at again.
Well, Stu, thanks so much for taking time. And thanks so much for writing the book, Aim for the Uprights. We really hope people pick it up. Leave a review for Stu on Amazon, because that's how people find the book, and the book gains notoriety. Use it as a playbook for your life. And I always remember the audience, stay true to your core values, because that in the end is who you should be judging yourself by, not by other people's success, but by the core values that are embedded in you and who God made you to be. So if you stay true to that, you'll find your life to have a lot of meaning. So thanks for that reminder, Stu. Absolutely. And blessings on what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Blessings to you too. And thank you for having me again.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Trailblazers and Titans. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the insights shared, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you the stories of the world's most inspiring leaders. Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and exclusive content. Join our community of Trailblazers and Titans, and let's continue to learn, grow, and transform our visions into reality together. Until next time, keep blazing your trail and striving for greatness.